Good morning. I can honestly say it is wonderful to be able to be here today. I oftentimes have mentioned in the past, we all have to travel roads that we wouldn't choose to go down on our own if it was our decision. I was on one of those roads this past week, and some of you may have heard about I had a kidney stone, which gave me an ambulance ride to the hospital. And if you've ever wondered whether your phone is listening to you, I had proof given to me after this episode with all the talk about kidney stones. I tried to go on YouTube yesterday morning, and the very first thing that pops up is the comedian Jeff Foxworthy, and his session that day was, "It took me 6 weeks to pass my kidney stone." And there's no way that should have ever come up other than my phone was listening to what my conversations are. And so Jeff Foxworthy, he asked his audience if there were any women that had both given birth and had kidney stones. And I think there's probably 8 women that was in the audience that raised their hands, and 7 out of the 8 said that the kidney stone was worse than giving birth. And I've had both my knees replaced, and I didn't think it would get anything worse than that. But your memory tends to favor whatever has happened most recently to you. So my most recent memory seems to me like that was worse than getting my knees replaced. But anyway, we all have those roads we go on that we really didn't want to travel. We are all here today because we already believe. We believe that Jesus is the Son of God, that he has the path for us to find salvation. And every year, the percentages go up of those who aren't properly educated about God as a child, and they either don't believe God exists at all, or they have a total misunderstanding of him. And so today I want to give you an example of God's creation bearing witness for him, that we also might be prepared to fulfill 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15, and give an answer to those who say, "Why do you believe and why should I believe?" That we might be able to be God's creation, being a witness to the fact that God is real, Jesus is real, and that the creation itself is giving testimony of the Creator. To go along with that, I'd like to turn to Psalms chapter 139. I'm going to read the first 14 verses out of there. Psalms 139. O Lord, you have searched me and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you know it completely, O Lord. You hem me in, behind and before. You have laid your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. I rise on the wings of the dawn. If I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. I feel oftentimes in life we go through dealing with the daily problems and not observing close enough how wonderfully the Lord's creation is and how it testifies if we are observant enough to see the things that are presenting the testimony. There's a song in the Red Book, number 321, and one of the verses has a phrase in it. It says, "For such a worm as I," referring to the fact that Christ would give himself when I was in the depth of my sin, and referring to themselves in a humbling manner of, "For such a worm as I." And the marvelous thing about that is we have the ability, opportunity to whatever we have become to change into something else. And I'd like to talk today some about something in our creation that has done that, to give us an example of change. We have the chance to evolve. We can either stay a worm or we can evolve into something else. Isaiah 55:9 reminds us that my ways are not your ways. The Lord does not think as we do. And thank God for that. Have you ever asked yourself, had I not gone into the occupation that I did, what topic interests you that you would have a second choice of spending your life doing? To me, any of the sciences, the geology, biology, chemistry, and physics have always intrigued me. And I don't believe they go against the Bible. But when they are properly applied, they support the Bible. I do not believe that you can study biology without asking yourself the question, there must be a God. The biology of the world teaches that, if we are being observant. There was a game that could be played. It's called fact or fiction. You divide up into two teams, and you have the ability to either concoct your own story, or you can refer to these facts that are true, but are really hard to believe that a lot of people have never heard about. And so your team decides to either concoct a story, and the other team has to decide, is this fact or fiction? And the story that I'm going to tell you is something that man himself could probably never have made up, because this thing that the Lord has created and put in our creation it's bizarre. And if you study the sciences, you don't really understand how this can really happen. So these creatures that I'm going to talk about, they testify to a creator. And I'm asking you today, does your life testify to a creator in the way that you're living it? So we're going to go into nature. There are several things in nature that are very intriguing. If you study nature, almost every type of animal has some kind of mating ritual that it goes through. And you could spend many lessons just talking about these. And I've seen documentaries on several of them. Things that the male species does to make themselves attractive to the females so they will be willing to mate. And we know how we've seen deer get into fight, so they can have the doe's attention, how the turkeys strut their stuff, how the salmon jump out of the water trying to get back to where they were born. And there's even spiders that, once, I can't remember now if it's, the black widow or the tarantula. I think it's black widow. The female is bigger than the male. And so after they mate, the female eats the male. And so there are all kinds of things in nature that might make you think twice about how you're living your own life. But anyway, we're not going to talk about those particular things because there's something else that I want to zero in on. And you could call it a glorified worm. But recently, Rodney and I just finished a job for a couple down by Lake Aquabi, and they had a garden in the back where they had created plants that would be friendly to monarch butterflies. And she took me back there and showed me a monarch caterpillar that was eating on this plant. And monarchs only like forms of milkweed as far as eating when they're in the caterpillar stage. And, but the strange thing about the monarch butterflies is they migrate just like the geese and the ducks do. And how is that possible? A monarch butterfly in 1 year's time there's 4 generations in 1 year's time. It takes humans 80 years to have 4 generations. And a monarch butterfly, once it becomes a butterfly, the first 3 generations only live for 1 month. But then the last generation, right when fall is setting in and the weather is changing, the 4th generation lives 9 months instead of 1 month. And the monarchs go clear up into southern Canada and into New England. And when the trigger is pulled, that 4th generation of monarch begins to migrate to an area in Mexico in the mountains at 10 to 11,000 feet in altitude. And it is an area the size of Des Moines, about 60 square miles. And there's only 12 spots. And that's where the monarchs have to fly to in order to spend the winter. They have never been there before. Their mother and father had never been there before, nor their grandmother and grandpa. It is a freak of nature that they have the ability to find this place. The Creator gives them that ability. And if you're looking for something to prove that there is a God, all you have to do is start paying attention to the biology of this world that He has created. And His creation repeatedly specifies there is a Creator. We often talk about a chicken don't have very many brains because of how they behave. Well, a butterfly weighs under 1 ounce. They guess about 1/5 of an ounce. So there's not a lot of brain matter in a butterfly, you would assume. So how can they find their way to Mexico into this mountains where many people in this room couldn't find their way to that mountain in Mexico if they had GPS taking them there? But these butterflies have this ability to do that. And so any butterflies that are in the United States east of the Rocky Mountains, that's the only place that they go is the 60-mile square area in Mexico. And scientists did not know that until about 1975. And so decided they were going to test their theory, and they took 2,000 butterflies that were hatched in Kansas, and as soon as they changed from being a caterpillar to being a butterfly, they flew them to Washington, D.C., and it was the time of the year where that was the generation that would be migrating. And they wanted to, and they were able to mark these butterflies, tag them, if you will, and they traced these, and for the first 2 days, the butterflies flew straight south, which would have been a death sentence if they'd have continued on that path. But then they changed their course and went to southwest, and they found the tagged butterflies in the mountains of Mexico in the first week of November when they were due to arrive there. About the first week of October is when they get to the Mexican border, and it is said that before the monarchs started to diminish in population, that there would be a swarm 50 miles wide about the first week of October when they would arrive. So these butterflies had to overcome getting, some of them that were in Canada had to find a way to get back across the Great Lakes. And so if you was doing a detailed study of this, it just seems to me like it's such a testimony of God's creation bearing witness for him. If you would like to see information on this, this was on public television. I found it on YouTube under The Incredible Journey of the Butterflies. But the thing that I want to compare to in that is that how does one creature that is a caterpillar or a form of a worm become one of the most beautiful flying things that exists in nature? How do we, in the low state of our sin, change into something beautiful for God? The word that science uses is, I'm afraid I'm going to mispronounce it, metamorphosis, where one creation starts out as a worm and becomes something that can fly. How does that caterpillar know how to fly? When you study nature, you are blown away by how things can happen. Humans have to have parenting to accomplish anything. And yet out in nature, God allows things to come about without always having parenting involved in any way. But we have to be willing to evolve from what we start out as in life and evolve into something that glorifies God. And this is one thing in nature that is an example to us that it doesn't matter where you come from. It only matters the direction you're headed. And as the butterflies, they tried to misdirect them by taking them 2,000 miles further east and still made the correction to find the place that the Creator had prepared for them. And we also can be misdirected by those around us, but we still have the ability, we have the written word that will give us the directions to get to where we need to go. As man studies life forms on earth, they are so different, so diverse, and so many forms. God slowly reveals to us all of life's interacting forms of life, that if you are paying attention, and being aware of your surroundings, you can get direction from God's creation that there is hope for you to end up going the right way yourself. But if we become glued to our smartphones, totally dependent on man's technology instead of investing our mind's time in reading the written word, we can be misled. This generation does not even realize how vulnerable they are because of their lack of exposure to the Bible. 10 years ago, one of the military officers in the U.S. government said that the next Pearl Harbor was not going to be in that fashion. The next giant world conflict would start in cyberspace with the shutdown of the internet, hackers getting into government computers, cell phones shutting down, our normal forms of communication being interrupted. And for a lot of us, that would totally disable us. So we have to be prepared for what could happen, that we might be able to represent the Lord in the best fashion that we can through the remainder of the days that we have. I read earlier Psalms 139 verse 14, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. None of us probably reach our end of our days without realizing just how wonderfully we have been made. We're not observant enough to appreciate all the intricacies that the Lord has detailed into our lives. And it's up to us to choose. Do you stay a caterpillar, or do you go through metamorphosis and become something beautiful in the eyes of your Creator? This is the day the Lord hath made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. These tiny little creatures that weigh under an ounce testify of the existence of a Creator. Do we do the same with our own lives? That is the goal, to metamorphosize into a creature that testifies of our Creator. I leave you with that message and hope that we can all reach a higher level of our potential than we did yesterday. We give you the opportunity to make a change in your life as we stand and sing this invitation song.